Welcome back, everybody. We're getting right into draft for this game one of the LHGPL Grand Finals between the Akuma Shurikens and Omega Gaming Syndicate. My name is Gordo, and I am joined by Rudude. And Rudude, we are getting right into these bands.
We definitely are here, and as I mentioned before in that pre-show, the Malphite mid from Intexi that gets immediately banned away by the Akuma Shurikens here in game number one. They are not having that ruining around and tearing up their rift. On the other side, of course, Ash taken away from the Shurikens, not allowing that pick potential in the mid game to come through, as well as the consistent damage that the Ash does provide. We're going to see something a little bit different coming across the bot lane of Akuma.
Yeah, and that is going to be a couple of jungle bans coming across now. We see the Lilia ban, we see the Evelyn ban across a lot of different leagues lately. We've seen the meta has become that once the Lilia gets on that ban list, that the Graves has to hit it as well. We're going to see if that is going to be the follow up by Omega Syndicate, or if they're going to focus on towards other things. Looks like they aren't. Graves is going to be available here for the Shurikens.
And I expect them to take this as well. Not only is Graves a beautiful B1 pick, also is a very decent answer to the Hecarim, which is something that a lot of teams have been happy to take for themselves. I want to quickly mention that Fallen here is a big advocate for the Kindred in the jungle, so maybe a little bit of a marksman v marksman matchup inbound in that jungle. But for now, Syndicate, they've picked up the next two picks.
Certainly something to keep an eye out for, and that is going to be a huge pick for Hexmist here on this Graves. He was one of our all-star players that we covered earlier tonight, if you were early enough to the stream, and he is going to certainly be a menace on that Graves pick. We see the Ezreal's been locked in as well here, and now Akuma Shuriken's going to round out their first round picks here with, I would expect a support, but lots of options available.
Exactly, they have the option to maybe try and answer some of these solo laners, and
Ooh.
they definitely do here. Both of the All-Stars for Akuma picking up their champions very early on in the draft. Sluter going to be taking that Ahri into the mid lane, potentially blind, potentially up against the Galio. Have to remember that the Galio is a flex pick. Rutinium or Intexi both capable of taking this Galio into that support or mid lane role respectively. And that Ahri pick could be a little bit pre-early, a little bit focused out if the Syndicate roster choose to turn their attention elsewhere in the draft.
Yeah, and that is going to be the slightly mini reworked Ari from a couple patches back. She now gets additional movement speed from the W, I believe, and her passive has been changed around. So, going to be interesting to see how that's going to match up potentially with this Galio or potentially with a different pick. Additionally, the Volibear going to be a flex pick between that top and jungle. So, really unclear where a lot of Syndicate's picks are going to end up at this point in the draft.
Exactly. All we can say fairly for certain is that we're going to see the Kai'Sa down in the bot lane as an answer to the Ezreal. Something that scales just as well into the late game as the Ezreal is obviously always going to be a great pickup here. They've opted to not go for a punish in the laning phase and more so for something that scales evenly and maybe outscales the Ezreal as we get later and later. That plasma damage coming through huge in the late game can definitely tear through tanks or even squishy members if they choose to pick them up. Because at the minute, the Akuma roster likely going to have top and support still to choose from and have that option now to pick up some tanks in their team. Quick note to mention as well that Galio Kai'Sa as a bot lane duo, very, very dominant.
Yeah, and that is going to be Omega and Akuma both taking a couple of bans here to defend what are likely to be their solo lane picks. These Volibear going to not be too good into the Kennen, so they're going to ban that away. Same thing with Ari into that Diana. They're going to follow it up with a Thresh ban as well, trying to pinch that support pool a little bit, knowing that Akuma has not selected that yet.
Exactly. Very wise target bans from either side. Akuma respecting the potential flex pick of the Galio, and Syndicate taking away some comfort for both of the remaining members to pick here. We've got 9-line Klein, not going to be able to take the cannon into the top lane. Asymmetric without that Thresh in the lane is going to mean that there are no flays available to maybe try and interrupt some of Galio's engages, deter him from getting in perfect range. Overall, though, you can see with the final ban from the Akuma side that they're unsure as to where this Galio is going to be targeted, where it's going to be placed, because they're focusing bans mid and support.
And that is going to be the Syndra lock-in for the side of Syndicate, which means it is likely to be the Galio support, as Syndra is going to be the choice on the side of Syndicate for Intexi to stare down Sluter, who's going to be picking this relatively new Ari feels like in Texie feels like Syndra is going to be the answer there. Now we're going to see what the final picks are coming through here. It's going to be the Tarek, a bit of an unusual lane bot here as it is locked in. So it's going to be Tarek Ezreal facing down in this bot.
Yeah, it's definitely going to provide a little bit of unique synergy with the Bastion into the stun coming through. The Arcane Shift could potentially catch a few members off guard. Not quite the same style as the Yi Tarek combo, but the Ezreal has a similar ability to find those quick, cheeky stuns if he shifts in to give them the appropriate positioning. And with the Syndra pick coming in for R4 for the Omega Gaming Syndicate roster, opens them up to the counter pick not only in the mid lane because they saw Ari, but also potentially in the top lane here if they choose to turn this Volibear into a jungler. Taking the Renekton potentially blind for Akuma could prove to be quite a bit of a downfall if the Syndicate roster have something to answer it in the top lane.
Yeah, and you talked about cheeky Tarek stuns. It feels like this whole Akuma Shurikens roster is built to get some of those cheeky stuns with dashes and mobility abilities aplenty. With the Graves E going to be available, the Essence or the Arcane Shift coming through from the Ezreal, as well as Ari Ultimate and Slice and Dice from Renekton, going to be quite a few different ways for them to have a stun coming from an unexpected angle. As Syndicate going to be locking in this Urgot here that is going to confirm the Volibear for the jungle and is going to give them a favorable matchup in top lane against this Renekton.
Exactly, and Fallen Artemis is no stranger to the Volibear himself, played it in the quarterfinals as well, so is definitely adept, adverse, and ready to take this pick into the jungle, as it is needed for in this game number one here of this best of five. The first game going to get underway just in a little bit here, and all the rosters locked in. We talked about the last two picks for Akuma needing to maybe provide them with a bit more tankiness and a bit more of a front line. Well, what's better than tanks? It's better is a champion that can make all five of your team invulnerable to damage. The Tarek definitely filling the role here. Maybe not giving them a front line, but definitely giving them a lot of ease and a lot of safety in the team fights.
Yeah, certainly the case. And it does look like Omega ended up probably being able to abuse these flex picks and end up with some pretty favorable matchups for themselves across a pretty wide a variety of the lanes. The Volibear into Graves as a jungle matchup, a bit more favorable than one might expect, just because Volibear is so powerful at those early ganks and is going to be able to successfully duel Graves away from those Scuttle Crabs, one of the more difficult things to do on quite a few of the classic jungle matchups into Graves. Additionally, gets the powerful lane of the Kaisa Galio and gets counter picks for both of their solo lanes due to the benefit of the Volibear flex.
Exactly. A lot of draft adaptations made by the Syndicate roster to allow them all of these advantages here. As you mentioned, they have their pick of answers in the solo lanes, and this Urgot into Renekton matchup, something that we could be looking to keep our eyes on because it is fairly volatile. Definitely kill pressure on both sides if one of the top laners oversteps. As we move on into the in-game client draft here, Nine Line Client and Blood King on these bruisers, respectively, are both going to have their chance at carrying the game here. We've seen Urgot's take over, we've seen Renekton's take over team fights. And if the Renekton is able to find an assassination onto the Syndra, onto the Kai'Sa, then that is a large portion of Syndicate's damage taken fully out of the game.
Absolutely, rude dude. And, I'd like to take a step back for a second here while we're getting through all of these picks. And once again, note, I know I said the same thing in our focus stream last night, but this is really going to be a send off for season 10 here in this series, as we are going to be getting that preseason patch tomorrow. This is going to be likely the last series played by both of these teams using the current meta, using the old set of items available from the shopkeeper. Let's see how they're going to be able to send it off.
Exactly, it is going to be a little bit one of those tributes to season 10 here tonight, and zooming back in on the series as a whole, it's something that we can look to focus on from where we looked at in the pre-show is going to be Hexmist in the jungle. This jungler for Akuma, who had more than 50% first blood participation in the regular season. And if Hexmist can start snowballing here, has this Graves, which will definitely outscale the Volibear, be able to go toe-to-toe with multiple members across the Syndicate roster. If he's able to start getting ahead, start snowballing, put Fallen Artemis behind, it tends to be where Volibear can struggle because the jungler is very dominant in the early game, but tends to fall off even with the full tank build. With a aggressive all-star jungler on the Akuma side, this is definitely an advantage for them to try and look to exploit.
Yeah, and we can see throughout the draft, it was really the side of the Shurikens prioritizing some of these early blind picks for their all star players here, not looking to get counter picks, not looking to find uh, individual lane advantages, but instead picking these what they feel to be powerful choices in this early first round. The first pick, Graves, and the blind Ari coming in the second round. They trust their players to be able to execute on these picks, so much so that they're willing to expose themselves to counter picks to get them.
Exactly, and comfort really can be the name of the game here. This is by no means the complete top echelon of League of Legends play right here. It comes down a little bit to comfort picks as well. With the Ari, with the Graves, as you mentioned, coming on through. Yes, Graves is definitely at that top tier of junglers right here, but Ari, yes, received a rework, but hasn't seen the play come through that we expect from a super S tier mid laner. So, as you mentioned, the comfort for Sluter, this other all star player for the Akuma roster, definitely going to be valuable here. The scatter of the weak in this mid lane going to be a crucial cooldown, as always, in Syndra lanes. If that goes wide, then we can expect Sluter to be able to find a good trade, nice advantage in that 1v1. But similarly, Sluter has the option of whiffing the charm or hitting that charm, and both here of these CC abilities for the mid laners are going to be so pivotal in determining who comes out ahead and who comes out behind, that one of those missing and one hitting on either side could determine an entire laning phase.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you bring up the importance of comfort over maybe what's the very best meta picks down in this league, because to me, that's almost even more exciting. It provides a whole new layer of depth to the draft that both these players and coaches are going to need to synchronize with each other in order to take the most advantage of, when you can't just look at a tier list with somebody way better than you made a couple months ago and pick down in order, and instead have to focus on what champions your players are best on, how they're going to interact with what champions the opposing team is best on, and providing a whole nother layer of strategy to the picks and bans, especially as we continue throughout this series.
Exactly, and perfect example of that would be that bot lane here. Ezreal has sort of dissuaded himself from League of Legends top tier play in the recent patches, and we've seen the rise of Jhin and Caitlyn and others sort of harder hitting ADCs with those auto attacks. But in this draft here, game number one, completely absent coming on through, and Twisty himself as an AD carry feeling a lot of comfort on the Varus in particular, one of those ADCs that has been fallen out of the meta since the beginning of Season 10, but he's still not afraid to pick it up here. And as we get later and deeper into the series, maybe we see some team comps diversify. Maybe we see a lot more comfort picks coming on through. For the Akuma roster, they've definitely taken some comfort early on. Syndicate have stuck a little bit more toward that meta and standard style of drafting.
Yeah, definitely something that they've gotten a lot of experience on throughout this split. Got a lot of games in on pretty much all of these champions throughout the split. Not 100% how many games Urgot Blood King has, but I believe it's more than one. Meanwhile, though, we are going to see, I think this is the first Ari game for Sluter. I don't know how much Tarek we've seen from Asymmetric. I certainly don't know how much of a Tarek Ezreal duo we've seen. So might be seeing some new looks coming in from the Shurikens as we get into their final series of the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Game number one of this best of five here. Best of five's always really interesting in terms of developing their own series meta as well. Something like the Graves definitely has the option to be first pick by every team every game, and the priority on Graves can go up so high that it warrants a ban, and then something on the ban list gets dropped off, and then you have to think about, well, if they're picking that, what are we going to pick into it? So many mini games in draft do come through that you just have to really be interested and really be keeping an eye out for every single pick coming through from game one to game two, all the way through to game potentially number five.
Yeah, and both of us are predicting this to go to a Game 5 series. I was predicting 5 games in favor of the Shurikens. With Rudude, you picked 5 games over in favor of Omega Gaming. We'll find out who's going to strike first in this series as soon as we come back. First, we're going to get loaded up into the games, make sure everybody's all synchronized, but do not go anywhere. We'll bring you every bit of the action. Welcome back, everybody, to the LHGPL Grand Finals Game 1 between the Akuma Shurikens and Omega Gaming Syndicate. I am Gordo, and Rudude is joining me once again, bringing you every bit of action for tonight's games.
Exactly. This is game number 1 of the best of 5 right here. Everything from the past 10 weeks or so culminating in a grand final between Omega Gaming Syndicate and the Akuma Shurikens here. And we have got the first game and every game coming to you from this Omega Gaming Esports Twitch channel. Early on, we can see maybe a little bit of respect being played between both of the teams here because we have that standard 5-point split. Wards being traded across pixel brushes across the map. And then these junglers should now be able to tell where either one is going to be starting.
Yeah, going to be looking to see who they can find here. Alive is going to be landing a quick Mystic shot over on to his opponent in Taxi just to start things off, but nothing too violent going on either way at the start of this game.
Now, going to be a little bit of tit for tat, throwing the poke out doesn't necessarily mean too much. Does, however, give Alive a cheeky mana flow band stack, so has 25 extra mana going into that bot lane than he would have done previously. And something that we, can take the time to mention here is these rune choices for the players here, and in particular, Sluter taking the Glacial Augment, meaning that he's likely going to be going for that GLP for that Twin Shadows and be looking for a more utility-focused Ahri as opposed to that damage one-shot assassination style.
And Blood King going to be going aggressively on a 9-line Klein here right away. He does have the favorable matchup on this Urgot. He does have the range advantage. He has started that E, managing to land it onto the Renekton, flip him over, and get even more passive procs from those shotgun knees.
Yeah, you can see already the Electrocute doing work in the mid lane for Intexi as well in those trades. And I like that you mentioned this top lane as we highlighted it perfectly with the directed camera right there that Urgot in the early game should definitely have the advantage in that top side 1 versus 1. You can see 9line actually still on 0 CS here. The zoning power of this early game Urgot, who had the choice of counter pick. We have to remember that the Urgot was taken into the Renekton for a reason, and we can see it being exploited already right here.
Yeah, definitely was able to get that level 2 first, is still holding 9-line Klein to only 1 CS, and is now going to be going for the flip yet again, but going to get creep blocked into the turret, actually accidentally tanking 3 shots, is forced to flash away, and has given up almost all of the priority he's achieved.
Yep, a little bit of an overstep right there from Blood King, and you can see
it. Hexmith is here to capitalize, but he's going to be face checking into Fallen Artemis, who's going to burst him out right away, going to be getting damage onto him with that press the attack, and force the flash out, and he could match it if he wants to, but he knows that 9-line Klein could be waiting around. He's just going to take the favorable trade. It is going to end up being the flash from Hexmist, almost traded for the flash from Blood King, in the extended play.
Yeah, and overall, it's a really good read from Fallen to try and protect the Urgot right there. Sometimes junglers will say, okay, my top lane's pushing, I'm just going to leave him to do that. But recognizing that he was pushing, recognizing that Hexmist would try and find the play top.
Ooh, and that is going to be a trade. 9-line Klein going to be able to burst right through that Urgot shield, but it doesn't matter. The CC lasts long enough that 9-line Klein does get executed down by that Urgot. Blood King takes the advantage right back for himself.
Exactly, and despite having that flash burn in the top side of the map, despite the overstep, Blood King still able to come out on top in the top-sided 1 versus 1. Important to note as well, Sluter actually losing the flash in the mid lane due to a roam from Rutenium.
Ooh, and with that down is going to be flashed and charged on by Fallen Artemis, going to be CC'd down and end up getting the kill, picked up by Fallen Artemis, who's trying to donate it. Didn't quite work out that way, but still quite the advantage going over to the side of Omega Gaming Syndicate early on in this game 1.
Exactly, 2 kills already, nearly 1,000 gold the lead here for the Omega Gaming Syndicate roster. Such an early lead at such an early point in the game, setting themselves up for an early game snowball right here, and it's exactly what they want. Fallen Artemis on this volley bear as a jungler that does so well during these early minutes of the game, tends to fall off a little bit as we get later and later, but he's able to find these advantages, put himself ahead of the curve. It puts Syndicate in a brilliant position to carry on and close out the game.
Going to be a little bit of aggression coming out from Alive in the spot lane, managing to land the Essence Flux and get the trigger off of it from that Arcane Shift. We can see a Blood King now right back up in the top lane. He's used the teleport. He's recovered. Oh, but it looks like it's going to be Rutenium going in for an engage in this bot lane. He has knocked back Alive, and they do get the proc from Kai'Sa onto that Ezreal. Going to be good damage coming through, but not quite kill pressure, as Twisty's pretty low on mana.
No, and with Asymmetric also taking the Summoner heal in that bot lane for the support, it gives a lot more agency to keep the Ezreal alive. I like that the ADC's actually gone for Exhaust himself, recognizing that he's going to be the one getting jumped on by Kai'Sa, by Urgot, and not having to rely on where the Taric is positioned necessarily to put down that key summoner spell. Have to keep an eye on this bot lane still, because we can see Fallen Artemis took a recall, got himself a Balmy Cinder, and is now looking to try and force something in this bot lane. With the wave being pushed, isn't going to be able to find a gank, but could potentially look to clear out some vision and go for maybe a cheeky invade.
Yeah, he's been pinged out there by the side of the Shurikens. They know that he's invaded into this red side jungle, so Sluter going to be playing a little bit farther back here. Does not want to end up being caught out and ganked again. His flash is still down.
No, and you can see that the Blast Cone used to go over to the Dragon, and it looks like that's just going to get started up by Fallen. Even though the Kai'Sa has recalled, the priority in the bot lane was enough to maybe make him think that he's going to be A-okay to take that one away. It's going to be a Cloud Soul early on, probably the best single dragon that you can secure, because not only does it give you 10% cooldown reduction on your ultimate, which is one of those impactful stats that actually you can feel the difference on, but also signifies that you're going to get more of those high impact souls in your games, something that can definitely turn the tide of a team fight in the soul department.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on as we continue on in this game. That is an early first Drake picked up for the side of Mega Gaming Syndicate. Well played by them to abuse the advantage accrued by Fallen Artemis, using that pressure to convert it into a dragon when he knows that other members of the team are not going to be able to come and interfere. Now we've got the reset coming through from Fallen Artemis. He's returned back to his jungle, just going to be farming it out here. So the Rift Herald going to be spawning in about 1 minute.
Yeah, and the spot lane could be
going
action.
for an engage here, going to be definitely getting the taunt onto both carries here, but let's see if he's going to actually be able to make anything happen. Just going to be pushing forward with Twisty, getting the plasma procs onto Asymmetric, but not enough damage between the two of them, especially through these Taric heals.
No, and importantly, they do burn the exhaust there.
Titanium's going in again, another Justice Punch onto him, and now Intexi has teleported in. He's going in onto Alive, and they're going to be getting the Plasma Procs onto him right away. That's going to be an easy pickup for Twisty, and the Unleashed Power going to pick up Asymmetric, a 2-for-0 in favor of a Mega Gaming Syndicate. They're starting to run away with it.
Beautiful teleport from Intexi in the mid lane. Bases gets himself a Lost Chapter and immediately teleports down to the bot lane. Kill for himself, an assist as well. That is probably the best single TP usage you can expect from a mid laner at about 7 minutes in the game.
Certainly the case, and we can see Blood King now is just able to start to use this advantage in the top lane. He is managing to maintain a CS lead despite some of those mistakes in the early game, was able to turn it around by getting a kill for himself, and now has developed about a 15 CS lead, but it might be interrupted here as Hexmas is coming up for the gank and to force the flash out of Blood King yet again. Luckily, he was able to get it back in time, and so is going to be able to escape this gank.
Yeah, just about gets away right there. Doesn't want to overextend his welcome just too much in here, and with the Bramble Vest as well, it's actually very deceptively tanky versus these two AD members on the top side. Nice little bit of armor going into that 2v1, and with the anti-healing as well, giving a little bit of damage.
Artemis has found Hexmas here doing his own blue buff. He's going to move on to this and try to steal it away with the smite. We'll see if he's able to do that. Hexmas does not have access to it, and so it is going to go down to Fallen Artemis. Well picked up by him there, continuing to choke out Hexmas in this jungle game.
Exactly, and it comes down to this mid lane matchup right here. And Texas found the opportunity to teleport bot lane, get 2 kills down there. Now found the opportunity to roam into the jungle from the mid lane and help out Fallen with securing a buff in the enemy's jungle. So far, this mid lane matchup definitely looking pretty decent for a Mega Gaming Syndicate, and maybe challenging the All Stars early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And now Blood King going to be possibly getting a recall here out of 9-Line Klein, although he is just kind of bouncing up and down here using that Renekton skin. Now Alive going to once again be threatened on by this Justice Punch from Rutinium. Not quite going to get hit up this time. Gus going to force him back away. That is a CS advantage coming towards Twisty in this bot lane so far. Has got about 10 CS lead over Alive.
Yeah, CS leads occurring in both of the side lanes at the minute. Blood King versus 9-Line. Going to be a little fight on the top side, but a quick dash away. Gets the Renekton to a cheeky little trade and a quick out as well. The bot lane, really, though, the biggest CS disparity that we've got, and you can see that Twisty, with that kill and assist early on, is actually going for a very AD-oriented build, with a gank coming through for bot lane.
And once again, that's going to be a huge taunt landed onto Asymmetric, going to force the flash out of him, and here comes the ultimate from the Taric, but with the heroic entrance from the Galio just to knock some targets up. Both ultimates going to be blown for about nothing there, as Asymmetric now is pushing forward aggressively. It's going to be a flashback in from Rutinium. Excellent taunt from him there, immediately immediately bursting out onto asymmetric, but the mid laners have arrived as Sluter is now coming down here to try to make something happen in this fight. He arrived far earlier than Intexi, and so is able to secure the double kill for his team, but the fight goes on as Intexi now finding himself stunned up against the wall, going to have to flash out, and a fallen Artemis going to have to run interference for him. He ultimates away, has not yet blown the flash, but is it so low HP? He's going to be forced out of this kill, and now Hexmist going to flash forward and pick up Intexi. Another kill going over to his side, a one fight for the side of the Shurikens.
Yeah, they get 3 kills for 1 in that bot lane, and a really nice gank from the Hexmist there. Jungler for Akuma coming up huge, trying to turn that bot lane back around in their favor. Really important that Ruthenium and Twisty burn their ultimates before the fight really happens. The disengage potential from the Cosmic Radiance giving off what it needs to right there. They burn the 2 ultimates, get the Cosmic Radiance out, and they're able to reset the fight with it. The re-engage from Ruthenium coming at just the wrong time as Sluter re-engages from the mid lane Roman. We talked about this Syndra being the roam god of the early game, and now we get to maybe 10 minutes and Sluter finds the angle, finds the opportunity, and makes the difference in the bot lane.
Yeah, that's the all-star factor right there, is Hexmist and Sluter able to come up at just the right moment, able to beat out their lane opponents, or jungle opponents, depending on who you're talking about, showing up bot lane just in time, able to dish out the damage where necessary, able to get those key targets down, and able to secure themselves a win in the bot lane. Might not be enough to take control of the dragon, though, as Syndicate immediately coming up to start this off.
Yeah, Sluter's nearby as well.
Sluter going to be around here alone in the pit with Fallen Artemis. Now Blue Team actually going to manage to steal away the dragon. Now Ruthenium finding himself on the wrong side of dodges. They've already melted through multiple members of Omega Gaming Syndicate. Twisty going to be able to pick up a kill onto Sluter, but now the rest of the team is fighting on in here. Intexi going to get a massive stun on multiple targets. That's going to be a huge execute coming through for Blood King, going to fear up every member of the Akuma Shurikens as they win a 4-for-0 fight. 4-for-1 actually, as Fallen Artemis has gone down.
Yeah, so a really nice little play there from Syndicate. They do lose the Drake, but the fight on the backside of it is definitely favourable for them. The teleport from Blood King and those 2 high-impact ultimates come through, and they work out huge. The Fear Beyond Death from the Urgot picking up a fear and a kill, and then also that Unleashed Power, catching Hexmist off the back end of that as well, burning multiple summoner spells, multiple kills in their favour. Hexmist able to fall, steals the dragon, but does die for his sins.
Yeah, and Omega Gaming Syndicate not out of this one yet. They had an unfavorable fight in the bot lane, but they are still going to be capable of winning out these fights, especially if Blood King is able to get that execute and land a multi-man fear as he was in that last fight.
Exactly, it's something that we need to keep our eyes on, because with these champions that we've got for the Omega Gaming Syndicate roster, the CC is looking fairly I'll say situational is the best way of putting it here. There's a lot of setup that goes into maybe getting the engage that they want. Because they're going to be looking at scatter of the weak picks and getting Ruthenium into the front line, the CC potential from these champions isn't as easy or as clear-cut as maybe the Headbutt Pulverize combo of an Alistar, for example. So finding any little extra thing that they can, which prevents the damage from coming through, is going to be very useful, and definitely something that needs to be monitored for the Akuma roster.
Certainly the case is Twisty now going to be pushing aggressively in the bot lane. That's going to be a shift forward from Alive. He's going to get traded back on. As a result of that is now it's going to be a Blast Cone, accidentally launching Blood King a bit closer than he may have wanted. It's the ultimate back over from Fallen Artemis, though. That's huge burst damage coming in from that Stormbringer, as Intexi is going to be able to burst out onto 9-line Client. It's going to be a 1-for-0 so far, as the rest of the members of the Akuma Shurikens are forced to back away into the river.
And they're going to start up the Herald as well.
Going around on the flank here. He's going to see Sluter. He's going to be able to land the stun met up with Fallen Artemis, who's going to land a stun of his own, and that's going to be a rampage for Intexi as he picks up another kill. Now the stun coming on through from Asymmetric in the bot lane as the fighting just continues across the map. Ruthenium getting a good stun there in under the turret, but Twisty not quite able to follow up. Nobody wants to be tanking up this turret as Asymmetric and Alive going to be pushing them back here, trying to fight it out in the bot lane.
Yeah, and you can see Twisty completed the Essence Reaver here, going for, as we mentioned, that early Q evolution. Finding a few cheeky crits in the bot lane trades is definitely giving them the advantage in the 2 versus 2 right here. Yes, the Taric has the ability to sustain with the mana that he's got, using that Q to its full effectiveness, giving the Ezreal some little bit of HP here and there. But you can see that the trades in their own case are definitely favoured for Syndicate down bot lane.
Certainly, and Intexi has really been able to make his presence felt across this game. A couple of really good roams, a couple of really good flanks, a couple of really good scatter the weeks coming through on this Syndra pick, able to secure them multiple fight wins now.
Exactly, and you can see from his build path that he's recognized the ability to find the dodge angle from the Akuma roster right here. Every single member nearly having an ability to dodge out on that scatter the weak and able to get away from danger. Having the GLP will enable him to be able to find those scatters, slow down the enemy team, make sure that he's in a position to keep himself a little bit safe as well, buy himself a little bit more distance with the slow. A very high value item coming through right here. Not only does it have a nice little AP ratio on it and an AP boost to it, gives him that little extra to keep himself safe.
Certainly the case here, as we are going to see Blood King still building up in this top lane. He's not maintained the CS lead from early game, but that's actually going to be an all-in from Intexi in the mid lane, going to be landing the Scatter of the Week, following up with another Dark Spear and an Unleashed Power. Not quite enough damage to 100-0 Sluter yet, but definitely going to be getting up there pretty soon, as now Hexmist forced to clear out waves in the mid lane, going to be at risk of being dove here, though. Here comes the Heroic Entrance, as well as the Volibear Stormbringer to turn off that turret. Not quite able to get onto Hexmist, though. No CC available, so he's going to be able to kite it out.
Yeah, so gets away, does burn the flash. Just get the ultimate from the two support jungle duo right there. So overall, going to be actually a favored trade for the Akuma Shurikens. That being said, they are going to lose their mid-tier 1, and that is solo turret gold going into the Syndra's pocket right there. Looks like they're also going to the top tier 1 as well with the Rift Herald as well. So the solo laners here getting a big injection of gold.
And 9-line Klein now might find himself up a little bit farther than he wants to be. Hexmist is here to back him up, but his Renekton has already been chunked down to very low HP. He's going to be focusing up onto Blood King, though. Does not have access to the Phase Rush. Has gone ahead with that Fleet Work instead, but Sluter has roamed up as well. There's going to be a teleport coming through from Intexi to protect his top laner. Here comes the Scatter of the Week. It does land onto Sluter yet again, followed up with another slow. It's not going to be hit by the W from Syndra, though, and that's going to mean he can back away.
They bear the teleport from the Syndra, but it is to save Blood King here, who's accrued a little bounty for himself, so it's definitely going to be worth not to give that over to the Shurikens here. And you can see with such an expenditure on the top side that the Drake is going to be secured by Omega Gaming Syndicate right here. 3 members on the top side, meaning that's an easy Drake take for Fallen Artemis. Puts them to 2 dragons out of 4 needed for that all-precious Mountain Soul.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that Hexmist was able to get that steal in the last Dragon fight, is if he wasn't able to, that would be sole point going for the side of Syndicate.
Exactly. Game of inches, game of centimeters here. If that steal goes the opposite direction, as you mentioned, it's going to be Soul, and would have put Akuma on a timer here. Every 5 minutes they'd have needed to force a fight. This buys them another little window here where they can maybe give up the next dragon as well if they're not feeling quite strong enough to take the fight. But they have now that, that little bit of ease, that little gateway into the later stages of the game, where we're hoping that they can start taking over with the Ezreal as their leading damage carry. We're still sat on 1 item for the Ezreal as opposed to, that 2-item power spike that we love with the Sheen.
Oh, and alive once again, going it aggressively with that Arcane Shift. Might be punished for it here, as here comes the Radiance to try to keep them both alive, but it's already worn out. That's going to be the Killer Instinct from Twisty to try to escape here. Has to flash out as well, but there's a teleport in from Blood King. They're looking to try to make this fight happen, as Hexmist is the one who's being focused onto. It's going to be a huge 2-man taunt here, as the Execute is going to come through from Urgot. It's going to fear multiple targets, and it's going to end up with a double kill going on over to the side of Omega Gaming Syndicate. They were able to shut down Intexi on the other side, but it is a 2-for-1 so far. Now it's going to be a big charm landed onto Rutinium, excellently buffered with the Justice Punch, though. He's going to be able to escape.
Ooh, yeah, and it is just the 2-for-1 in favor of Syndicate. 5 members from each roster down in the bot lane, and you would hope for a bit more of an explosive fight right there. Fortunately, everybody nearly, it seems, had their summoner spells up and was able to escape right there. Looks like Syndicate might be trying to look for a little bit more. We have to remember that this is the only tier 1 left on the map for Syndicate to claim, and with the resources they have, they might have been able to force the play. Instead, going to look to take a recall, look towards something else across the map, maybe trying to set up some side waves, set up some vision, because at the minute, the name of the game for them should be to get that Mountain Soul. We're still only 19 minutes into the game, so the Baron isn't too much of a threat just yet. And they should be looking to close out with neutral objectives. It's sort of the story of Season 10, is that you don't necessarily need all of the kills. If you're able to pick up that soul, pick up the Baron, you're always in a great position.
Yeah, but at the moment, it is almost a 4k gold lead going over to the side of Syndicate, and they're being able to use that to force onto the objectives. They managed to get 2 turrets to 0 now, 2 dragons to 1, and that 1 had to be stolen away from them in a very close fight.
Exactly. You can tell that the tempo is definitely in favor of Syndicate coming here to game number 1 against sort of...
Once again, Asymmetric might find himself caught here. He gets hit by a Scatter of the Week, met up with a taunt, met up with a Justice Punch, and that's going to be an easy kill picked up for Intexi. Now 6-2-4 on this Syndra.
Yeah, I really like the usage right there. Using the Unleashed Power really doesn't necessarily mean anything, as we know that there's not really going to be a fight for the next few minutes. The dragon not spawning for 2 minutes here, using that unleashed power to find a pick, find a kill. It's definitely going to be worth it. A little pickup of gold, cash injection is always going to be nice for a Syndra in the mid lane. We can see a lot of respect being paid with the item build that she's gone for as well. Banshees and the GLP, so much safety in these two items. So the damage might not necessarily be all there for in tech seat for the most part. But with the third item on the way, I'm hoping to see something high ticket like that Rabadon's, or potentially a Void Staff if we are feeling particularly needed in that regard, because these ticket items that we're going for, we need to start seeing the Syndra be able to pump out the DPS and not just survive Akumas.
Definitely the case, as we are now going to be seeing the side of Omega Gaming Syndicate starting to group around this dragon. They feel, or this Baron rather, they feel they are significantly ahead and they can start fighting for vision up here. Blood King, meanwhile, just going to be taking out the last of these outer turrets in the bot lane. Probably going to make sure he's not tanking the turret first, but then there he goes, just going to take that one down as the last outer turret for Akuma falls.
Yeah, and that's 2 kills worth of gold funneled into Blood King from turrets alone right there. 600 gold from the local turret gold and the taking down of it on its own. He's taking these Qs like they are a nice little bowl of cereal for breakfast at the minute. But overall, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. The has enough burst damage versus a level 11 Ezreal to actually catch him off guard. If that shift goes in, I feel like the one-shot potential from Blood King is actually pretty obnoxious at this point in the game. Reaching that 2-item power spike will be pretty crucial for him before this dragon comes up. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get there though, because it's 30 seconds before it comes on up. 5 members of Omega Gaming Syndicate are down here trying to contest dragon. They know how important the objectives are, and they're trying to do everything they can to stop it from going away.
Yeah, but if we're going to talk about item gaps here, take a look at the mid lane, as Intexi has now completed 2 items and has a Needlessly on top of it, whereas there's only 1 item coming through for Sluter and the components of a second one. That is a huge lead for this Syndra. Going to be keeping a look on Intexi to see what he's able to accomplish in this fight, as here comes the Scatter, not going to hit that one, as the Void Seeker does come through onto Alive. Sluter is looking for a potential charm here, but Blood King is so beefy in this front line. They've already started up the Dragon on the side of Omega Gaming Syndicate. They're going to be focusing down onto this to try to put themselves on a slow point, and here comes the engage from Rutinium, rather, right as they slay the dragon. Now 9line Klein going to be frontlining here, but they've already gotten the objective they wanted on the side of Omega. They're going to sacrifice Rutinium here, and they're just going to back away.
Exactly, they get 1 death, but they also get the dragon, which, as you mentioned, Gordo, puts them to soul point here. And overall, that's definitely a worthwhile trade. In Texi may even look for something on the backside of it, actually just going to scatter and walk away here. Overall, I'll quite happily take that trade for Omega Gaming Syndicate. They come out with the Dragon, they come out with Soul Point, which, as we mentioned, is going to now put the timer onto the Akuma Shurikens to really force something in the next 5 minutes, force themselves to find an advantage, find an opening to get themselves back into this game, because if we see a rinse and repeat, it's just going to be another objective for the Syndicate side, and this one will mean much, much more.
A big stun landed onto Sluter there for quite a bit of damage from Intexi. But yeah, Omega Gaming Syndicate going for the safer play on that dragon, making sure they can secure it and just back away.
And I want to point out right there that we saw sort of a falter in either team's roster right there, that they were both posturing around the dragon, but nobody really had any go buttons, no engage to make the fight happen and force one another off of the Drake right there. I feel like Syndicate should have had would have had the potential to win the team fight if they were able to find a good engage, but the best that they had was putting Rutenium, this low economy support, down in the bot lane to try and find an angle, find an engage. But when you're in the front line, it's just so obvious, so scripted what you want to do, that it's difficult to get away with. And it's the same thing for Akuma Shurikens right here. Their best angle for an engage is a Renekton flank onto the backline, and then just everybody pile in through the front side of the fight. These team comps drafted from both sides are going to struggle to find fights if they're not just skirmishes or picks picked out in the jungle.
Yeah, and Rutinium, if he's the one going for these primary engages with the Justice Punch, he can't ult on top of himself, so it means that he can't be there for the follow-up with the hero's entrance like you would want him to be. Perhaps they could have Fallen Artemis engage with the Stormbringer, but that's going to be pretty much the only tool that can really consistently do that and enable a follow-up from Rutinium.
Exactly, the usage of ultimates across both of the support jungle duo definitely need to be monitored and kept track of in the team fights, because if you are looking for an engage from Syndicate, it feels like those are your 2 leading options coming on through. 9line Klein looking for a quick trade right there, and just the beauty of the slice and dice means you hit one target, you can get in, get back out very quickly indeed. You can see no second item finished for Blood King just yet, so at the minute you'd have to give the bot lane advantage maybe over to that Renekton just because of those completed item bonuses as opposed to the components that we've got for Blood King here. Looking like the Death Dance going to be the second item, which is to be expected here, but also isn't finished just yet, so the 1v1 at least should be favoured for the Renekton.
Yeah, going to be a huge spike for Blood King once he's able to actually get there, but still waiting on it for a little bit here. He does sitting on about 1k gold in his inventory, so he will be crossing that threshold pretty soon, just a couple more waves. So we are going to see, once again, everybody just posturing a little bit more towards the top side as the Baron's the only objective available on the map, but not going to expect either team to go too hard to start it here, especially when Omega Syndicate is already in the lead and can just try to wait out for the next dragon and try to secure themselves a soul here. So that's going to be a big stun landed by Intexi, going to be followed up with a Super Soaker, followed up with a Q, followed up with the ultimate, and Intexi's going to be able to pick up that kill, but he is going to get taken down by Hexmist in turn. It's going to be a 1-for-1 in the top lane.
Overall, just a trade of kills doesn't necessarily mean too much. The important thing to note here that Intexi burns his flash in that 1-for-1. We see another fight in the jungle.
There's going to be an engage coming in onto Asymmetric, going to be hitting him up with that Justice Punch, going to have all the follow-up CC in the world that he needs, and is going to be able to pick up Asymmetric as well. Now both members of the Akuma Shurikens bot lane are down.
And a minute before the dragon as well. This means that the priority in vision is definitely going to go in favor of Omega Gaming Syndicate. Intexi has teleport if they get caught out in the jungle, and you can see here Fallen definitely feeling confident to walk on through, clear out some vision, and start setting up for this dragon. I want to quickly once again mention Intexi with no flash before a fight that is going to be so important here could prove to be the downfall of Syndicate if and only if Akuma can find the right engage angle. Something that they struggled with earlier on in the game, something that they will continue to struggle with because of the tools they've drafted for themselves. But if they do find the fight, do find the angle into Intexi, he no longer has a flash. He's going to be reliant solely on that Scatter the Weak to keep himself safe.
Definitely something to be watching out for here as we are going to be moving to posture around this dragon. Earthdrake spawning in about 15 seconds. This is a potential soul coming through for the side of Omega Gaming Syndicate. Let's see if they're able to actually finish that off. Hexamus is going to have to either pull off a steal, or the rest of the Shurikens are going to have to find a way to force them off and get this dragon for themselves.
Definitely. Every single summoner spell available for everybody other than that one flash we mentioned. The dragon started up early on by Syndicate.
Yeah, they started it right away, and they have the positional advantage. It doesn't seem like the side of Shuriken can really get a good engage here, as Klein is now coming in to try to make it happen, but he's just going to get bursted out immediately to Killer Instinct coming through from Twisty to make sure that he has the damage to finish off that kill. And now here comes the Justice Punch from Rutinium, just going to be trying to force away members from the other side. The Cosmic Radiance comes through, but it doesn't matter, as Red Team has already slain the dragon. Omega Gaming Syndicate now has access to the Mountain Soul, and they're going to be chasing away the members of Akuma Shurikens as a result. That's a flash over from Twisty, as he's just going to melt through Sluter and pick up another kill for himself.
Absolutely bursted through right there. Who is the assassin in that 1v1? Twisty, level 15 on the Kai'Sa, flashing in on Ahri, taking down in the solo pretty much right there. Beautiful little play to ensure not only the fight, the kill, but also it looks like it could be the Baron right here. Hexmist is still nowhere nearby, in fact, down by the red buff doing the Raptors. They're going to concede this one. And that team fight from Omega Gaming Syndicate was a perfect demonstration of what the team comp is lacking for Akuma right there. They found the angle, they had a nice pincer maneuver with 9-line Klein coming from the bot side and the other 4 members on the top side, but the turn from Omega Gaming Syndicate was too brilliant. They turned perfectly onto the Renekton, bursted him down before the front line from the other side of Akuma could engage, and those tools just weren't available to help out the Renekton. After the fact that they'd taken down the Renekton, it was all Blood King. The solo top laner here for Syndicate able to zone away the 3 crucial members that were still in the fight. The Dragon goes over to Syndicate, the Baron goes over to Syndicate, and game 1 now firmly in their hands.
Yeah, they've blown this game wide open off of that fight, Rudude, as they managed to take 2 major objectives and now have the Elder Drake spawning for them in about 4 more minutes. Now, just going to be focusing around in the side lanes, can see if they can set up a multi-lane push with this Baron and with the massive advantage they've accrued for themselves.
Exactly. It's going to be a game of turrets for the time being, at least. No neutral objective to secure for the foreseeable future here. And we can see a nice distribution of resources right here. 1-3-1 being set up by Omega Gaming Syndicate, and this is pretty much what we should expect right here. It's going to be on the Akuma Shurikens to try and find an engage in this short time where the solo and side lanes are still pushing up. We've got Intexi in the top lane, and 3 members in the mid lane. With Blood King down bot lane, shouldn't be able to be matched by anybody really. These solo laners are more than capable of dealing with a 1 versus 1, especially with the Syndra completing the fully upgraded Rabadons.
Yeah, and now it's going to see, ooh, 9-Line Klein actually getting engaged on here by Intexi. He's just going to be landing all of his burst abilities down onto this Renekton and just going to melt through him easily. Very little MR available for this Crocodile as he's just going to get taken down. Now, Intexi might find himself in an unfavorable situation, but actually just going to burst right out onto Sluter. Does not need the ultimate to be able to chunk him down to below half HP, and it's going to be followed up with by the Killer Instinct from Twisty. Not able to finish off that kill this time, but going to force Sluter back.
Exactly, not only are Syndicate picking up turrets, but they're also taking a couple kills across the map as well. Taking down 9-Line Klein means that they have even more agency to walk into the Akuma base and start dismantling that piece by piece. Top lane tier 3 goes down, mid lane should be next under siege right here with Fallen trying to tank that up himself. The inhibitor should be the focus here for Syndicate, and it definitely is going to go down here. 3 cannon minions focusing right now, all with Baron buff, all dealing damage.
Yeah, it's going to be all 3 lanes being pushed at once here as Blood King is pressuring onto the bot lane, and we have Fallen Artemis walking up in that mid lane. Now they're just going to be looking for some Nexus turrets, potentially, as it's so difficult for the members of Akuma Shurikens to get up and actually clear away these Baron waves. Now Sluter going to be going in for his engage, but actually going to end up taunted up and Justice Punch by the side of Rutinium. Now going to be a follow-up from Fallen Artemis on the side, as it looks like Intexi has already been bursted out onto, but he was able to trade with 9-Line Klein in the end. Fallen Artemis now going to fall to alive as well, as it's up to Twisty to deal out the damage in this fight, but is he going to be able to do so? No, he's just going to back away here as Blood King and Rutinium are working on this mid lane inhibitor. They're not going to be able to finish off though. Now here comes the Taric stun onto Blood King, going to potentially look for a big shutdown here. Rutinium actually getting soloed out by Alive as he chases him down in the bot lane, but now Twisty is looking for the fight, but he's going to end up stunned. He's already used the Killer Instinct, so he can't escape. He doesn't have access to the shield, but Blood King's going to be here with the flip and with the front line. They're going to be able to pick up the Taric from the other side as a result, and that's going to be a double kill as Sluter falls down as well. Now Blood King going to be forced to run away as he's chunked through so much of his HP. He's been kept alive by this death stance for so long, but it can't last forever as he's dodging out on his skill shots, but it's not enough. He gets shut down by Alive, and they're going to survive for the time being with their base in shambles.
Exactly, and that is the key point right there, Gordo. Kills traded back and forth, I believe a 4-for-3 overall in favor, be it of the Akuma Shurikens, but it comes at the cost of all 3 inhibitors. So much pressure from double super minioned, triple waves going into their base for the next 5 minutes, and that timer is going to far overlap with the respawn of the Elder Dragon, of the Baron here. Syndicate, they get what they need to, with a near masterclass in how to use the Baron, sending 1 member to all 3 lanes, getting the push across multiple sides of the map, drawing Akuma from piece by piece, not knowing where they needed to go, how they needed to engage. They find some kills, but they lose everything in their base for it, and with these pushing minion waves now, it feels like just a matter of time before Syndicate are able to secure some neutral objectives and secure game number 1.
And which of these teams is the first seed again, Dude? Because Omega Gaming Syndicate are just putting on a clinic in this game 1. They have played excellently across virtually every position for this game, able to secure themselves numerous advantages, and now they're going to be staring down this Elder Drake in about 30 seconds.
Exactly, and coming off of the early game where they had a fairly decent start as well, started off the game 0-4 in their favor, obviously, so, you know, the gold lead has sort of gone up piece by piece, and it's been little bits of action that have slowly mounted and slowly made it so they are in the good spot to take these fights. And at this point now, when you've got the Mountain Soul, they got themselves the Baron earlier on, those little chunks of gold that were in their favor, resulting in these neutral objectives, is pretty much how you want to play in League of Legends here, ladies and gentlemen. They're using the resources to their fullest potential right now. With 5 members down looking for this Elder Dragon, they only need 2 to take it. Fallen more than able to tank this one up. Kai'Sa able to deal the damage, and OGS are going to look for an engage elsewhere.
Blood King going to be popping that Righteous Glory, coming on in, getting the slows off on multiple targets, but he is all alone here. He only has Rutinium for backup. Rutinium going to use that Hero's Entrance just to kite out for Blood King. He's so tanky with access to that stance, and with the additional tank stats coming through from the Righteous Glory, and his team was able to pick up the Elder Drake. Such an important positional advantage for Omega Gaming Syndicate there, as they were able to just force off every member of the Shurikens.
Exactly. The Shurikens couldn't send everybody to the play because of the siege on their base right here. The triple inhibitors being down, meaning those double super minions coming on through. They actually take a Nexus turret, and Shurikens don't even expend all of their resources to try and stop the Drake. They lose not only the Dragon, not only the Baron, but a Nexus turret as well.
Yeah, and now that the second Baron has been picked up, it's going to be trivial for the side of Omega to be able to push through these final turrets. They're just going to be Baron buffing up these waves as they come on through and looking to close out the game as they are moving on up here. As five going to be having one more fight here as the Shurikens try to fend off this massive wave of minions, but they're not even going to be able to do that as a huge stun comes across from Intexi, and here is the final fight. Immediately, it's going to be Nine Line Klein who gets bursted out onto, and they just don't have the damage. Immediately, their AD carry just going to get sucked back in by the Urgot ultimate. Fear beyond death indeed, as they manage to finish him off and finish off the Nexus as well. It's going to be a win in game one for Omega Gaming Syndicate.
And the curse continues here for the Akuma Shurikens. You mentioned that they only dropped one game in the regular season. It was to this to the Omega roster, and it proceeds all the way through into playoffs as well here. The rocky start that Syndicate took all the way through the playoff run, definitely not harming their attitudes, definitely not deterring them here, as game number one goes firmly in their favor.
Yeah, Omega Gaming is Syndicate coming out swinging here. They looked well practiced on a composition like this. They had so many opportunities to be able to force teams off on a positional level. They did such a good job of controlling the river, of controlling those dragons, of being able to snowball themselves into a fairly early soul, even with one of the dragons being stolen away in a very close smite fight that Omega was able to win a huge team fight off the back of.
Exactly, and I want to, pull some attention back to Akuma right here, that they have the right idea going in right there. The last team fight that we saw was pretty much always going to go in favor of Omega Gaming Syndicate, but I like the presence of mind to realize that this is the fight that they have to take. This is do or die, otherwise we are just going to lose the game to the minions. So we can see already that just from those little decision-making choices, that they know what they're doing with the game, and that this series is still by no means over. They have the potential to go further and further in this series, because albeit game number one went in the favor of Syndicate, and to me, fairly convincingly felt like they maintained a lead throughout. There's still obviously a lot of opportunity for the Akuma roster to start making a series out of it right now.
Yeah, and the decision now comes down to us, Rudude, as who are we going to choose for our MVP of game one? And, Blood King was dominant throughout the game. Twisty was able to find some interesting angles and good burst damage at the end, but I feel like it has to go to Intexi, able to make so many plays happen in the early game off of teleports and scatters the weaks, and ending the game with 17 KP.
I'm right there with you, Gordo. I will quite happily give Intexi the MVP here for game number one. You are quite right that the early game plays definitely setting up Syndicate for success, and that really was the determining feature right here. Albeit that he has the most deaths and the potentially worst score for his team in regards to the carries, he was the one who set up the entire Syndicate roster for success, and without them, they would have definitely had a much more difficult time in game number one.
Yeah, and two of those deaths, maybe even three of them, are off the back of team fights where his team was just wiping the side of the Akuma Shurikens. Definitely a trade you're willing to take every time. No need to prioritize KDA over actually being able to ace your opponents and win the game. With that established now, we are going to throw it to a quick break while we get set up in Champion Select for game two, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.